Yo, it's Austin. I've always held the firm belief that video games are best enjoyed with somebody else. Some of my fondest memories have always been like in a co-op setting with a friend or a family member, so today I want to talk about some of them. I think most of us have memories of playing something with a parent or a childhood friend, be it a single-player game, trading the controller off between deaths, moving right on a screen, punching dudes, dungeon diving, traveling the galaxy, and loot hunting galore. Cooperative video games have existed since the early days, and let's be honest, who doesn't love punching someone on the couch when they take your fucking ruby ring? One of my earliest memories playing something co-op would probably be Sonic 2. Now, Sonic 2's co-op's pretty garbo. The whole little brother mode was pretty common back in the day, even if it was pretty lackluster. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to jump into the worthwhile experiences, the ones you remember for years. Since this is a personal list, I do want to mention that I'm not going to talk about MMOs. While I've played a ton of them and the cooperative elements there can potentially be awesome, I thought it would be more interesting to talk about games with a concrete ending. Not one of those forever games that developers seem to be so fond of nowadays. So basically, titles like Final Fantasy XIV, Destiny, Monster Hunter, Warframe, you name it, they're out. There's also a few that will be excluded for asynchronous multiplayer. As much as I like me some pixel junk monsters too, the online multiplayer doesn't give story progress to everyone, and that's a bit of a bummer. Still fun, but little blemishes like that take it down a notch. Also, trust me, I'm gonna miss some things here. This is just my opinion, so if your pick ain't included, don't worry about it. I tried to make my list varied so that it wouldn't just be the same genre of game over and over. But actually, if there's something neato you think I'd like, feel free to drop it in the comments, because I'm always looking for more co-op stuff. With that out of the way, why don't we get ourselves started? So grab a pal, grab a snack, and kick back and maybe enjoy one of my top 10 co-op games of all time. Ever. But before we get started today, I want to take a brief moment to talk to you guys about our lovely sponsor, NordVPN. I don't know about you guys, but I've had issues with privacy and my own security in the past. A couple years ago, my PlayStation Network account was accessed and hacked into. They spent about $300 and that kind of sucked. After going through all of that and hearing about how Wi-Fi hotspots were pretty insecure, I decided that I wanted to get myself a VPN. It can be nerve-wracking to try out new software and programs, but with NordVPN, I honestly don't have an issue anymore. Programs like Parsec and any P2B software leave your IP wide open and exposed, but Nord basically slaps their hand away and says, no! I actually use it on my phone, so when I'm traveling and need to connect to a public Wi-Fi, it's all good. Not to mention that Nord has thousands of servers located in over 61 countries, so it's easy to use pretty much anywhere. And look, it's not just me. PC Magazine gave NordVPN a perfect score. This is the one to get. So, just for you guys, my lovely viewers, NordVPN is offering 77% off a 3-year plan. Just go to nordvpn.com/Austin Eruption to sign up and start protecting yourself today. That's nordvpn.com/Austin Eruption and use the code Austin Eruption at checkout to get started today. I'll admit it, I'm a bit of a sucker for most things Dynasty Warriors. The more I see these weird spin-offs and mainline franchise games that come out, the more I find myself diving back in every few years. You've got your Hyrule Warriors and Dragon Quests and Attack on Titans and Katamari Musou. It's always a decent time to boot up the good old highly exaggerated Romance of the Three Kingdoms Murder Fest. While 9 might be a bit of a shit show, previous games in the series grabbed onto the formula and didn't let go. There's well over 4,000 games to pick from, but only one grabs my attention, and it's Dynasty Warriors 8 Empires. So you take Risk and Dynasty Warriors, you slam them together, and you get this awesome bullshit. Managing your empire with a friend, making strategic decisions, and conquering China has never been so sweet. It's a pretty standard fare for the long-lasting franchise, but the Empires games have always appealed to that country management sim craving in me. The character creation systems in the 8th Musou iterations allow for you to make and even upload some pretty ridiculous characters. Y'all can download a Warriors My Little Pony pack if you want. You can play as fucking Broly. Or you could even marry your friend off to another empire for an alliance and get yourself a shitty baby. Literally, a shitty baby. A lot of y'all might be more keen towards the Zelda theme or the open-ended nature of the Dragon Quest version, but for me, the good old-fashioned Dynasty Warriors theme feels nice in its full hella OP Lubu glory.
Let's get going!
Basically, if you like Dynasty Warriors and your friend likes Dynasty Warriors, well then go make a Dynasty Warriors 8 Empires. The 90s are pretty messed up. A long time ago in the distant year of 1999, violent game shows were all the rage. The Running Man, Battle Royale, Legends of the Hidden Temple, it's all for big money, big prizes. The Williams-made Smash TV released in arcades in 1990 and kinda set the scene ablaze. It was rare to see games with such violence in a public setting back then. That was, of course, until Mortal Kombat would hop onto the scene shortly after. Before the fatalities, it was just like Pac-Man, which I guess means everyone was super down with vor. The concept is simple. You and a friend are contestants on a hyper-violent game show. In a style similar to modern roguelikes, you clear a room by shooting everyone to death and making decisions on what rooms to navigate to next in search of treasure and the end of each level. Shoot for high scores with a buddy in what is a very challenging old-school game. I played a lot of Smash TV on the SNES as a baby lad with whatever friends I had over at the time. No matter how many times we tried, we couldn't make it past the second stage, but it was all good. The dual-stick shooter struck a big note for us and also the industry. Considering for a few years there, like 50% of indie games were some form of a dual-stick shooter, I'd say Smash TV was a hit. Ever since the death of the platformer and the fall of JRPGs, first-person games have taken over the industry. Be it a shooter or one of those slow-walking puzzle games, the first-person shooter genre really has a firm grasp on the market. While competitive multiplayer shooters might be a dime a dozen, the co-op side of things seems to be there only half the time. You've got your Ghost Recon Wildlands or your Far Cry's, but for me, nothing really scratches that shooter co-op itch quite like the Mad Max-inspired Borderlands. Prior to Borderlands 2 coming out, a group of 3 friends and myself marathoned the hell out of the original and all of the DLC. A weird, quirky, first-person shooter Diablo-styled loot collectathon with stupid and ridiculous guns kind of captured my entire essence at the time. You know, the lol so random humor might not have aged in the most graceful of manners. Especially considering I was literally 19 when the original came out, you know, the target demographic. However, as far as gameplay goes, the Borderlands trilogy has held up pretty well. Thankfully, you can play any of these games really easily because they've been released on like multiple generations of consoles, what with the Handsome collection here, but nothing really says Borderlands to me like the PC version. Between all 3 of these games, I've always been really keen on Borderlands 2. Granted, I haven't gotten too into the pre-sequel yet, but the class options in 2 were so varied and interesting that I couldn't help but love it. I always thought the story in Borderlands was kind of an afterthought. It wasn't necessarily that it was bad, just that it was pretty generic. A lack of, at least in my mind, interesting narrative had to be surrounded in weird memes and references in order to grab attention. A bit of a shame, but that's the way it goes. But in terms of raw, fun, shooty co-opiness, nothing can really bring Borderlands down. Unless you count Battleborn, in which case, yeah, okay, maybe. Although Borderlands did introduce me to Cage the Elephant, which is a win for me. The want for a proper Borderlands 3 has always been in the back of my mind, and hopefully one day Randy Pitchford will stop eating greasy Duke Nukem cheeseburgers while looking at Battleborn porn and give us a good-ass Vault Hunt and cel-shaded time. One where I can only assume Claptrap will inevitably ascend to become a JRPG-styled final god boss with like 40 different forms. It's gonna happen. Let's talk about anger. It's an all too familiar feeling for those, say, deep in a raid dungeon only to have a party wipe. All that time spent fighting through waves and waves of the undead just to be met with destruction. But let's change that scenario a bit. Let's say instead of a dungeon, you're in a kitchen. Instead of zombies, you've got like cheese and tomatoes. And of course, instead of becoming angry with the traps that lie within, you're getting infuriated with your fucking idiot friends. Just turn in the pizza. Just turn it in. Overcooked 2 and Overcooked are amazing. The original was a fun couch co-op time where you'd work together to assist King Onion in, like, saving the kingdom of food or some shit. The story doesn't matter at all. What does matter is finding yourself a small little group of friends who are ready to yell at each other. In Overcooked, you work with up to 3 other friends to try and become a working kitchen. Assume control of one of the mini kawaii chefs and communicate in order to work through the chaos of a working restaurant. Take turns grabbing ingredients, chopping them up, cooking them, boiling them, mashing them, putting in a stew, doing all kinds of various steps. Each dish needs to be prepared on a tight deadline or you'll be docked points. You can probably guess then that you're gonna be screaming. The fun comes in when you get to the stages where people are suddenly thrust into specific roles. Are you washing plates on time? Are you making sure the other side has enough lettuce? Do you think we have enough cheese? Overcooked 2 takes things up to a ridiculous level, having crazy dynamic levels that really pump up the challenge. If you have on hand a trio of at least relatively competent friends, this game is sure to please. As a bonus, the newly released game has an online co-op mode, so you're finally able to take this online without something like Parsec, so that's always pretty sick. One of my earlier co-op gaming memories is running around aimlessly in Diablo 2. That's probably because I was like 11 and I didn't really understand jack shit about any of the systems, but it introduced me to the entire concept of dungeon crawling. I'd graced upon it with my JRPGs back in the day, but I never really got into the whole long-winded and random side of things. The procedurally generated maps and loot algorithms in Diablo 2 gave me hundreds of hours of entertainment, so needless to say, I was pumped for a Diablo 3. So 100 years later, when Blizzard finally launched it, I dropped the big money to pre-order, greased up my computer and brain-hold in preparation to lose 1,000 hours of my life, and it sucked. I hated it. It doesn't help that you couldn't even log in on the first day or that the real money auction house was even a thing. I quickly dismissed Diablo 3, which is a shame because me and a few friends were pretty hyped for it. But 2 years later, when Blizzard decided to release this bad boy, I gave up. I liked it. It was good. For those about to be confused as to why I'm picking Diablo 3 over 2, I have one word for you. Controller. Diablo 2 and other amazing ARPGs like Torchlight 2 or Path of Exile have awesome mechanics and a staggering amount of depth. But for me at least, there's nothing quite like plopping down on the couch or sinking into a chair with friends and casually going apeshit. Since Diablo 3 was considerably dumbed down in mechanics from the previous entry, it actually made really well for a console game. Having played a metric fuck-ton of Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance, and Champions of Norrath, this ended up being the modern HD version of those games, and it turns out that was exactly what the doctor ordered. Because D3 is such a pick up and put down game on the consoles, it's very easy to just chill out with the world of Sanctuary and enjoy some old school dungeon diving. Especially if you play Necromancer, that shit's broken as fuck. Oh, okay. Number 5, beat 'em ups. Any one of them's fine. Have you ever stumbled upon something, be it a book or a movie or a game, and thought to yourself, damn, this is criminally underrated? I felt that way with the Suikoden's and the Sparksters, but more recently, I felt that hard with Full Metal Furies. I know a lot of y'all remember Rogue Legacy. This Cellar Door Games made roguelite platformer Metroidvania monster of a game made waves in my life and on the indie scene when it released back in the summer of 2013. The anticipated follow-up, however, didn't really do that. In fact, I didn't even realize that Cellar Door had released a new game until like 5 months after. It might just be the oversaturation of video games that has been the last 2 years, especially on the Steam store. But how does it play? Well, you see, take Rogue Legacy. Scratch the roguelike part, but keep the bullet hell. Make it a 4-player beat 'em up. Now, take each character and make them extremely unique. Toss in some RPG elements and different loadouts depending on how you want to play the character, and sprinkle in a little bit of goofy humor and voila! Full Metal Furies. Furies? Furies. Fuck. You play as one of 4 characters, Alex, Aaron, Meg, or Triss. Triss is kind of a tank and walks around with a big shield, Alex smashes with a big hammer, Aaron does engineering things, and Meg snipes. I usually play Meg because I have the best aim. In what is an all-female take on the classic dude bro squadron type game, Furies plays extremely well. Beyond normal levels, you also have many challenges that require you to take advantage of specific character mechanics, be it jumping over ledges or using Meg's sniper to search for hidden traps. The teamwork required in a 4-player setting is baffling and just completely destroys anything I've played before. Furies also decides to pull some cryptic Fez shit and hide a lot of the game's content behind puzzles and using the power of your brain. I somehow stumbled upon a clue while jamming out on the flute here, causing me to spiral down and try to decipher all this game had to offer. And let me tell ya, it's a lot. Unfortunately, the developers at Cellar Door seem to express regret in hiding a lot of Fury's content behind these puzzles. As they said, 40%. I, however, loved digging deep in order to find answers, so I'll say good job. While you can play it solo, I highly recommend finding a few friends to play with because pulling off air combos is so good. So my number 3 is actually gonna be a bunch of games. There's like a little industry secret that I don't think a lot of people know about, so let's keep this between you and me, okay? When you hear the words Japanese RPG, what do you think of? So usually like a single player story-driven experience, sometimes with anime. Okay, most of the time with anime. And well, hey, for the most part, that's correct. However, there are a decent amount of classic and modern JRPGs that have full co-op support. Final Fantasy IV, 6, and 9, full co-op. You just gotta give specific characters to controllers. The Secret and Legend of Mana games, full co-op. Eternal Sonata, sure. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, oh hell yeah, but that one's a little harder to set up. Star Ocean till the end of time, but don't do that. Don't do it. If I had to pick one game or franchise to lean onto though, it would have to be the Tales of franchise. While the games have their ups and downs in terms of story quality, Caesarea! The combat system has always been superb. Once you find yourself with a group of people to sit down with, a few who don't mind a little menu and item management, these narratives become a big co-op journey where you end up getting really attached to whatever character you like playing as the most. I did this with Symphonia when I was a wee babby, but more recently I've been going through Berseria. While it's no Vesperia, Berseria is quite a fun game to experience in a co-op setting. Seeing as how the teammate AI has always been adequate at best, pulling off string combos and juggling dudes with friends is a blast. Not to mention that Berseria ain't so shabby itself.
Aren't you cold dressed like that? I've just arrived from the south.
If you can't pull off that couch co-op, you can actually use Parsec to pull this off. I picked up Berseria on Steam recently and we all just play from my PC, which is kind of a ridiculous thing to think of, but it actually works pretty flawless. With most Tales games supporting this, and upon digging more than expected, I'd say if you can find yourself a few comrades willing to put in the time, this is the way to go. As a massive JRPG fan, the only way they can be better is with friends, so hey, there we go. Also, the Vesperia re-release with all the content we were shafted is finally out this year, so that might as well take the spot. So yeah, Vesperia HD is number 3. Fucking sick. Okay, let's do some math. Rhythm games are good, right? Friends are good, right?
Because I'm making fajitas!
So if you put rhythm games, add friends, multiply by a bunch of plastic, and divide that by the one guy who has to have Creed, you get Rock Band 4. Don't sit there and tell me that you don't like Rock Band. It's fucking music, man. Do you not like music? It's got Gimme Chocolate and like a whole bunch of Pearl Jam. It's sick. There's not much to say about Rock Band 4 besides the fact that the final batch of instruments were a bit lackluster in quality, but if you pick up the newest iteration, you can use your old instruments and all the old DLC you downloaded, which for me was a lot. So yeah, who doesn't like Rock Band? Liars. Alright, it's time for my absolute favorite co-op game. Now there's a bunch of games on this list, but there's only one game that I can always go back to anytime. There's only one game that I've played multiple times throughout the last like fucking 40 years it's been out, and there's only one, and it's real good, and I hope you like it. Resident Evil, guy sucking a giraffe's dick. Wait, no, Resident Evil 5. I remember RE5 having a ton of controversy when it came out, and not just on one issue. While it was rightfully lambasted for the meh AI your co-op partner had, I believe that Resident Evil 5 should have only been reviewed as a multiplayer game. That's where it shined, that was the way it was intended to be played. When you played it in the intended manner, at least in my opinion, literally nothing could and has topped Resident Evil 5. Not 6, not any other game on this list. The horrific adventure that Chris Redfield and Sheva Alomar go through is that of an insane B-action movie. Dumb, cheesy one-liners, insane stunts and twists all culminate in a non-stop ride that is really hard to put down. The co-op really shines when it makes you split the party, which builds a sense of tension. RE5 doesn't give you the spooks quite like its predecessors, but the feeling of anxiety you get when you're completely swarmed by zombies and some motherfucker with a chainsaw running at you is unparalleled. Although it's been nearly 10 years since the release of Resi 5, it's actually aged pretty well. The zombies still look horrifying and sweaty. Hell, everyone looks oiled the fuck up in this game, but that's just the style they went with. The controls are a little stiff at times and were that way when it came out, but the slower paced nature of the game brings that all together. Sure, you can't move while aiming, which is, I mean, it kinda sucks, but it's okay. Combat is built with that in mind. I'll never forget the first time I played through the ruins with a friend, or when I brought someone along with me on the hovercraft. These experiences all became synonymous with the person I played it with. We would find new secrets, learn optimal loadouts, and test our skill with the varying difficulties. 5 isn't the longest of games, clocking in at around 10 or 12 hours, so getting right back into it only felt natural. It's a damn shame that the follow-up to this was Resi 6, because I feel that Capcom completely missed the point. While Resident Evil seems to be back on track with 7, it seems like the concept of mainline co-op is in limbo. I also played Resident Evil Revelations, or Revelations 2 for this video. While I find the game to be an absolutely stellar co-op experience, the lack of an online or even LAN mode means you're stuck with the awkward split screen, which brings it down for me. Hopefully we'll see some more co-op action-y survival horror from Capcom in the future, but for now, Resident Evil 5 will be my go-to game anytime I want to blast some zombos with friends. There we go. 10, well, actually more than 10 co-op games that I think are the absolute asterisk best. Asterisk because you're gonna get mad. But hey, listen, if there's something that you liked that I didn't talk about in the video, please let me know in the comments. And until then, play some games. Go grab a friend, play one of these games, and I'll see you later. And I love you, and good night. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out our sponsor, NordVPN, and use the code AustinEruption in order to take advantage of the deal. It ends soon, so hop on it. Shout out to all my Patreon supporters for your prolonged support. Y'all are the best. Sorry for the gap in videos there. I had a few things come up with stuff you'll see soon, but you should be seeing a few more later this week. Check out the Patreon or get a channel membership, which is a new thing you can do if you want to help us out. Catch you next time, you goobs.